I can't go into the world and be creative and do my work if I don't have support from my husband.
Reese Witherspoon has finally broken her silence on her split from Jim Toth, and her words will change everything you thought you knew about their marriage. I had to choose myself, but this isn't some carefully crafted public statement or magazine interview soundbite. This is testimony from someone who was present during a private moment in late 2023, when Reese finally admitted the truth about why America's sweetheart walked away from what looked like the perfect marriage. The source describes Reese as completely raw when she delivered this confession. Not the polished, media-trained actress we're used to seeing, but a woman who had spent 12 years suffocating in a life that looked perfect from the outside while slowly killing her spirit inside. This wasn't just about growing apart or busy schedules. This was about a woman who built a business empire, became one of Hollywood's most powerful producers, and changed the industry for women only to realize that her own marriage was the one place where she couldn't be herself. Because what Reese revealed about the moment she knew she had to choose between her marriage and her identity will shatter the fairy tale image of their relationship forever. To understand why Reese's confession is so powerful, you need to understand what her marriage to Jim Toth represented and why walking away from it required choosing herself over everything she thought she wanted. When Reese married Jim in 2011, it felt like a fairy tale redemption story. She was coming off a painful public divorce from Ryan Phillippe that had played out in tabloids for years. Jim was different, a successful talent agent at CAA, but not an actor. He was stable, supportive, and promised the kind of partnership that would let Reese focus on rebuilding her career and raising her children. For 12 years, they looked like Hollywood's perfect couple. Jim supported Reese through her career renaissance, from Wild to Big Little Lies to building Hello Sunshine into a media empire worth hundreds of millions. He was the devoted stepfather to Ava and Deacon, and together they had Tennessee. From red carpets to family vacations, they projected the image of a woman who had learned from her mistakes and found her perfect match. But according to sources who claim to have been close to the situation, that perfection came with a price that Reese was paying with pieces of herself. The cultural expectations were suffocating. As Reese's career exploded and she became not just an actress but a producer, entrepreneur, and industry power player, the dynamic in their marriage became increasingly strained. Jim had married Reese Witherspoon, the movie star, but she was evolving into Reese Witherspoon, the mogul, and those weren't the same person. Here's what makes this story so tragic. Reese had spent years building a business empire focused on telling women's stories and empowering female voices. She was literally changing Hollywood's power structure, fighting for equal pay, and creating opportunities for women behind the camera. But at home, sources say she was still expected to be the supportive wife who put her husband's comfort above her own ambitions. The stakes couldn't be higher. This wasn't just about one marriage, it was about whether a woman could truly have it all without losing herself in the process. And what Reese finally realized was that sometimes choosing yourself means walking away from everything that looks perfect to find what actually feels right. A choice that would define not just her future, but her children's understanding of what it means to be an authentic woman in the world. The specific moments that led to Reese's realization weren't dramatic confrontations, they were quiet erosions of her identity that accumulated over years until she couldn't recognize herself anymore. According to sources familiar with their relationship dynamics, the problem started around 2018 when Hello Sunshine began its explosive growth. Reese wasn't just producing content, she was building a media empire that would eventually sell for nearly $1 billion. But success in business meant longer hours, more travel, and constant decision-making that extended far beyond traditional acting schedules. Sources say Jim initially supported her entrepreneurial ventures, but as Hello Sunshine grew from a passion project into a major media company, the demands on Reese's time and energy created tension. She was no longer just going to work, she was building something that required her complete focus and commitment. The cultural clash became evident in small but telling ways. Industry insiders report that Jim would make comments about Reese working too much or suggest she delegate more responsibilities so she could be more present at home. These weren't unreasonable requests from a husband missing his wife, but they revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of what Reese was building and why it mattered to her. The breaking point began forming around 2020 during the pandemic lockdowns. While many couples grew closer during quarantine, sources say Reese and Jim's relationship became more strained. Being home together constantly highlighted how different their priorities and life visions had become. Reese was using the time to expand Hello Sunshine's reach and develop new projects, while Jim wanted to focus on family time and traditional domestic life. But the most telling sign came through Reese's public statements during this period. In interviews about Hello Sunshine and women's empowerment, she would speak passionately about the importance of women maintaining their identity and not shrinking themselves for others. Yet sources close to her say she was doing exactly that in her own marriage, constantly moderating her ambitions to maintain domestic harmony. The contradiction was eating her alive. She was publicly advocating for women to be bold, take up space, and refuse to diminish themselves, while privately, she was doing exactly the opposite to keep her marriage functioning. Friends reportedly noticed changes in Reese's demeanor during this period. The effervescent energy that defined her public persona became more forced. She seemed exhausted, not just from work, but from the emotional labor of constantly managing the tension between who she was becoming and who her marriage needed her to be. That's when the quiet realization began. She was losing herself in the very relationship that was supposed to support her growth. Here's the detail that changes everything about Reese's decision to leave Jim. The moment she realized she had to choose herself wasn't triggered by a fight or betrayal. It was triggered by her own son asking her why she seemed so sad all the time. But what her child said next would force Reese to confront a truth she'd been avoiding for years. According to the source who witnessed Reese's private confession, the breaking point came in early 2023 during a family dinner. Reese had just returned from a business trip where Hello Sunshine had closed a major deal that would expand their production capabilities significantly. She was excited to share the news with her family, but Jim's response was lukewarm, more focused on how the expansion would affect their family time than celebrating her achievement. Later that evening, as Reese was putting Tennessee to bed, her son looked at her and said something that shattered her denial completely. "Mommy, why do you always look happy on TV but sad at home?" The source described Reese's reaction as complete devastation. This was her 11-year-old child recognizing that she was performing happiness rather than living it. The woman who had built a career on authenticity, who preached about women being true to themselves, was living a lie so obvious that her own child could see through it. But here's the twist that makes this even more heartbreaking. When Reese tried to explain to Tennessee that she wasn't sad, just tired, he responded with words that would haunt her. "But Daddy says you're always working because you don't want to be with us." That's when Reese realized the full scope of what was happening. Not only was she sacrificing her own happiness to maintain a marriage that no longer served her, but her husband was inadvertently teaching their child that her success and ambition were signs of her not loving her family enough. The source says Reese's exact words were, "I realized I was teaching my children that a woman's dreams are less important than everyone else's comfort, and that's not the lesson I want to leave them." For the first time in years, Reese saw her situation clearly. She wasn't just unhappy. She was modeling a version of womanhood that contradicted everything she believed in. Her marriage had become a performance of traditional domesticity that was slowly erasing the very qualities that made her successful and fulfilled. The source described the moment as Reese finally understanding that choosing herself wasn't selfish, it was necessary for her children to see what an authentic, empowered woman looks like. That's when she knew the marriage was over. Not because Jim was a bad person, but because staying would mean continuing to teach her children that women should shrink themselves to make others comfortable. And that was a lesson Reese refused to pass on. The evidence supporting Reese's decision to choose herself goes beyond her private confession. It's visible in the systematic changes to her public persona and business decisions that suggest she was reclaiming her authentic identity. Industry insiders point to a clear shift in Reese's professional choices starting in 2022. Her Hello Sunshine projects became more ambitious and personally meaningful, focusing on stories about women who refused to compromise their identities for others. The timing wasn't coincidental. She was using her work to process her own journey toward authenticity. Business analysts note that Reese's approach to Hello Sunshine changed dramatically in the months before her divorce announcement. She became more hands-on, more willing to take creative risks, and more vocal about the company's mission to change how women are portrayed in media. This wasn't just business evolution, it was personal liberation expressed through professional choices. Friends and colleagues report noticing changes in Reese's demeanor during this period. The careful, measured responses she'd given in interviews for years were replaced by more spontaneous, passionate advocacy for women's empowerment. She seemed less concerned with maintaining a perfect image and more focused on speaking her truth. The timeline of her social media presence also supports her claims. Posts about family life became less frequent, while content about Hello Sunshine and women's issues increased significantly. She was publicly reclaiming space for her professional identity rather than constantly emphasizing her role as wife and mother. However, defenders of Jim might argue that his concerns were legitimate. Managing a marriage to someone building a billion-dollar media empire would be challenging for anyone. His request for more family time and concerns about work-life balance could be seen as reasonable attempts to maintain their relationship rather than efforts to control her ambitions. While these claims haven't been independently verified, they align with multiple accounts from Reese's professional circle. But this argument ignores the fundamental issue Reese identified: the expectation that she should moderate her success to accommodate others' comfort levels rather than finding a partner who celebrated her ambitions. More importantly, relationship experts note that healthy partnerships involve supporting each other's growth, not asking one person to diminish themselves for the other's security. When a spouse consistently frames their partner's success as a threat to the family, that's not concern. It's control disguised as care. The pattern Reese describes is consistent with what researchers call success penalty, the social and personal costs high-achieving women face for refusing to prioritize others' comfort over their own fulfillment. In Reese's case, that penalty was being made to feel guilty for the very success that was changing the industry and creating opportunities for other women. The evidence suggests Reese's decision wasn't about choosing career over family, it was about refusing to accept that those had to be mutually exclusive choices. Her confession reveals a woman who realized that modeling authenticity for her children was more important than maintaining a marriage that required her to be someone she wasn't. Reese's decision to choose herself didn't just end her marriage. It triggered a complete transformation of how she approaches relationships, parenting, and her public persona, with consequences that extend far beyond her personal life. The most immediate impact was on her relationship with her children. According to sources, Reese's decision to prioritize authenticity over the appearance of family stability initially confused her kids, especially Tennessee, who was used to the traditional family structure. But friends say the change in Reese's energy and happiness became obvious to her children within months of the separation. The co-parenting dynamic with Jim has reportedly been challenging, but ultimately healthier than their marriage. Without the pressure to maintain domestic harmony, they can focus on what actually matters: raising their son and supporting Reese's older children. Sources say Jim has gained new respect for Reese's business acumen now that he's not competing with it for her attention. Professionally, choosing herself unleashed a creative and business renaissance that surprised even industry insiders. Hello Sunshine's projects became more daring and personal. Reese's performances gained new depth and authenticity. Her advocacy for women in Hollywood became more passionate and effective. She wasn't just successful, she was fulfilled in ways that had been impossible while managing the emotional labor of an incompatible marriage. The financial implications were significant, but ultimately liberating. Divorce proceedings involving someone of Reese's wealth and business interests are complex, but sources say she approached the settlement with the same strategic thinking that built her empire. She protected Hello Sunshine and her other ventures, while ensuring Jim was fairly compensated for their years together. But perhaps the most profound consequence was the message her choice sent to other women, particularly working mothers, who struggle with similar identity conflicts. Reese's decision to prioritize authenticity over the appearance of having it all gave permission to countless women to examine their own lives and relationships. The ripple effects extended to her public advocacy. Reese's speeches about women's empowerment gained new credibility because she was living the principles she preached. Her business decisions became bolder because she was no longer moderating her ambitions to maintain domestic peace. Her friendships deepened because she was finally being authentic about her struggles and choices. Industry colleagues report that Reese's transformation inspired other high-achieving women to examine their own relationships and life choices. Her willingness to walk away from a marriage that looked perfect but felt suffocating became a case study in choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. The source who witnessed Reese's confession described her as finally free to be the woman she'd been helping other women become. That freedom wasn't just personal, it was professional, creative, and generational, affecting not just her own life, but her children's understanding of what authentic womanhood looks like. The most beautiful consequence? Sources say Reese's relationship with her children has never been stronger because they're finally seeing their mother as she truly is rather than as she thought she needed to be. So let's bring this full circle. Reese Witherspoon's confession, "I had to choose myself," isn't just about one woman's divorce. It's about the courage to prioritize authenticity over the appearance of perfection, even when that choice cost you everything you thought you wanted. Look at what choosing herself actually meant. Walking away from a marriage that looked ideal but felt suffocating, risking her children's initial confusion and hurt to model authentic womanhood for them long-term. Accepting public scrutiny about her failed marriage to live according to her actual values rather than societal expectations. The progression is clear. Reese built a business empire advocating for women's empowerment while slowly erasing herself in a marriage that required her to be smaller than she was. She preached authenticity publicly while performing domesticity privately. She fought for other women's voices while silencing her own needs and ambitions. But here's the most powerful part of Reese's confession. According to the source who heard it, she wasn't bitter about the years she spent trying to make the marriage work. Her exact words were reportedly, "I don't regret trying to make it work. I regret how long I took to realize that some things can't be fixed by making yourself smaller." The source described her final realization as transformative. "I spent 12 years thinking that being a good wife meant putting everyone else's comfort before my own fulfillment. But I wasn't being a good wife, I was being a cautionary tale for my daughter about what happens when women don't value themselves enough to demand partnerships that celebrate who they are." That insight encapsulates the entire journey from fairy tale to self-discovery. Jim wasn't a villain, and their marriage wasn't abusive. It was simply incompatible with the woman Reese was becoming. And staying would have meant teaching her children that women should compromise their identities to maintain relationships, even when those relationships no longer serve their growth. The real triumph of Reese's story isn't that she left her marriage, it's that she chose to model authenticity over perfection for her children. She showed them that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept a life that requires you to be someone you're not. Her decision wasn't just personal, it was generational. By choosing herself, she gave her children permission to do the same. By walking away from a marriage that looked perfect but felt wrong, she taught them that their happiness and authenticity matter more than other people's expectations or comfort. Maybe Reese's confession will inspire other women to examine their own lives and relationships. Maybe it will help people recognize that having it all doesn't mean accepting everything, even when it looks perfect from the outside. Or maybe it's just the honest reflection of a woman who learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary for everyone who loves you to see who you really are. But one thing is certain. When Reese said, "I had to choose myself," she wasn't just explaining her divorce. She was defining what authentic empowerment looks like. It's not about having perfect relationships or maintaining ideal images. It's about having the courage to live according to your values, even when that choice requires walking away from everything that looks right to find what actually feels true. Maybe when Reese broke her silence about choosing herself, she wasn't just sharing her story. She was giving every woman permission to choose authenticity over perfection, fulfillment over appearance, and their true selves over everyone else's expectations. So what do you think? Was Reese's decision to choose herself brave or selfish? And can women truly have it all without losing themselves in the process? Drop your thoughts below, because maybe Reese's story isn't just about her. Maybe it's about every woman who's ever had to choose between who she is and who others need her to be.